We'll call to order the Town of Winchester Planning and Zoning Commission, November 10th meeting, 2025, 7 p.m. We'll take a roll call, starting on the left.
Krista Malaka.
John Cooney.
Peter Marchand.
Willard Platt Chairman.
Charlene Lavoy.
Jan Perry?
Okay, and Adams absent and excused. And since Adam's absent, how about you, Charlene?
Scott's
Okay.
absent.
Scott's not, yeah, Scott's absent too. That's absent and excused. Okay, agenda review. Anybody want to change anything in the agenda? Hearing nothing. Public comment? I don't see anybody. Public hearings, we have none. Number 5, old business, we have none. Number 6, new business, discussion, possible zoning regulations, various sections.
All right, so as we discussed at the last meeting, we wanted to use tonight as a little bit of a planning session because we don't have any applications on the table at the moment. I put together, I think maybe a 4 or 5 page memo based on some topics that we briefly discussed last 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever the last meeting was, and gave you kind of a summary of some of those items that to kind of talk about and discuss. So I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you want to just kind of run through that in order, and we'll just have a conversation on each one, and I'll make some notes. And we'll
Okay,
take
let's
some
start, yeah, let's start on the accessory dwelling unit.
Do we have a paper copy of that? Is it in there? Did I not?
It's in the packet.
It's his staff report.
The staff
Dated
report.
11,
It was in the
Yeah,
packet
or-
that's downstairs.
This was the only packet that was down there for me. It was last week's.
you know what, this was given, oh, this was provided last week, this stuff.
Or, this is our last meeting. Let me run down and see if I can see it.
I could get up on the screen too, if that makes more sense.
If it's just me, I'll run down. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Have we ever had regulations on this topic? Have we?
Yes, these are the current ones.
Yeah, so you currently have section 415.6, which governs your accessory apartments. You did opt out back in 2021, and we did find that Board of Selectmen ratified that, so it was done properly. So you can have your own regulations. You're not beholden to the state's requirements in Public Act 2129. So right now, you have an owner occupancy requirement. It requires notarized documents to be provided at the time of permitting, and then I think there's a yearly requirement as well. Exterior entrance has to be on the side or the rear of the building, it can't be in the front, 900 square foot maximum size, and the floor plan has to be submitted, and there's some other stuff that's in there too, but that's the bulk of the regulation right now. It's a special permit type, and it's allowed in all of the residential zones. So I think the question is, I don't know how many of those things you're seeing. Certainly, I don't think we've seen any since I've been here in the 9 months or so that I've been here. I don't know if you've seen many of those, and if you want to do anything with this regulation, if you want to get closer to the state's requirement, you have pretty tight regulations. It could be an as-of-right use instead of a special permit. It's just up for discussion, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things for consideration, if you do want to expand it at all, we've got to stipulate it's got to be where there's city water and sewer. 'Cause
Okay.
otherwise, any place without the city water and sewer, then you're dealing with additional disturbance for septic system, things like that.
Yeah, it falls to the Torrington Area Health
Right,
District.
exactly,
If
it does,
it's
but-
2 units, it
Yes.
becomes a central system request to the state, and there's some,
Right.
there's some additional. The only thing that I would say about that is, you've got large parcels out in the town that are not on sewer. And does it make sense to say that those aren't eligible for an ADU just because
Oh, I
they're?
agree. I mean, and they're out there. There's several out there. There's many of them that are that way.
You mean that already exists?
That already exists,
Yeah.
pre-exist to this.
We wouldn't regulate the sewer anyway. We would just require that they have the approval.
Well, I think one thing
Yeah,
Peter was saying.
that's what we were
was-
just talking about.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. So you're, let me make sure that I'm understanding you right. You're suggesting that one of the things we consider is requiring that it be sewered on the central system.
On the system, or if they come for a special permit or whatever we decide to do, that they have something from Torrington Area Health.
Yes.
That can, they can have the additional
Yeah, the system.
expansion of the
Yes,
septic
okay.
system.
Yes, all right, which would be required.
Because they should have that before we give any approval.
I see what you're saying, okay.
That's my opinion. I mean, otherwise, if we give an approval, then they turn around and go to Torrington Area Health
Right.
with an engineered plan, and they say they can't.
Okay, so sort of have a B100A site review from Torrington Area Health first.
Right.
If they're not on the septic system.
Yes,
Or
if they're not on city sewer.
I got you,
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
I would normally think that's, even if it's a zoning permit, that's the process that it would go.
It typically is, but I think codifying it doesn't
Yeah,
hurt.
I agree.
You know, because I think the thing about codifying those types of things, in my opinion, is it puts somebody,
On notice.
yeah.
Well, it puts them on
That's
notice,
right.
but if somebody's looking at our regulations online,
Yep,
they can see that, and
That's-
it's right out
It
there.
reminds them.
Yeah, it's right out there.
Right.
And in front of them,
I agree.
and there's no question about it. No.
Do we have any idea of how many there are of these already in town? No.
I don't.
Yeah.
We could try to figure that out.
I'm just curious. I mean, it's an old town, there's probably
There's probably a lot.
stuff like this
yeah,
going on, right?
Sure.
So a couple things that bother me
Garages.
here is, one, this regulation is written for like creating a ADU inside of an existing structure.
Yep.
But it also says on lots. So it kind of refers, you could put up a secondary ADU. So we need to regulate that to make sure that that ADU conforms to all current zoning regulations as far as, so they can't go get a ZBA on it. It has to conform at that time to all current zoning regulations.
If it's new construction. No.
If it's a new structure.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, we say 900 square feet. So a lot of regulations say 900 square feet or half of the primary structure. So I think it should also say half of the primary structure.
Because you don't want it to be bigger than the primary structure.
Right.
Okay.
And there's something
So,
here,
or half the primary structure, whichever's less.
yes, whichever's less.
Whichever's less.
Yes. Then there was something I read here about restricting it. To what zone it could be in. No. So, number 11 in the regulation talks about, has to be renewed. If a new owner comes in, he has to come right away. So, if somebody went and actually put up an ADU, they got some money tied up in that. So, it's almost like we're saying here that you might not be able to get that permit, or if you messed up and didn't file 1 year, then your ADU is illegal. Or if you modified your house for a mother-in-law apartment, and then for your ADU, and you spent $30,000 doing this, you know, it could be illegal real quick. So do we want to keep these renewal of the permits and all that in place, or do we want to, once you got it, you've got it type of thing?
So my comment to that, and I think you're right, you know, and this is something that I've struggled with in other towns as well. It's a very difficult thing to enforce, and it's a very difficult thing to keep track of for the office. And yes, the onus is on the owner. You have the ADU, you've got to come in within 30 days of purchasing it and file, and it's, you know, owner occupied, and submit that notarized document. But it sort of forces the property to be, in some ways, it makes reselling a challenge, right? Because it sort of forces the property to be owned by a particular individual, type of individual, somebody that wants, you know, to have a mother-in-law, or whatever, you know, whatever the case is. And so I think you're right. I think the notarized document within 30 days of sale is a challenge. And I'll leave it at that. I mean, I'm curious to see what everybody else's opinion is, but.
Well, then it can kind of escape from what the structure of this is intending and become all kinds of things.
I don't think so. I mean, a lot of times with zoning, you zone by the lot, not by the person. So this kind of is contrary to that. And I think if you, you know, so I'm not recommending that we go back to the special permit thing, because I think a zoning permit is the right way to go. But if we can require something to be filed on the land records, that it's if the apartment is rented, it's owner occupied. And then if there's a complaint, we investigate it like any other complaint and say it's not.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think owner occupancy, I mean, I think that makes it difficult. And, you know, if we're using it as a tool to try to increase good quality affordable housing, it can be that tool, right? It can be a rental unit that's a little bit cheaper than a full-scale house, because by their nature, they have to be small. So you're talking about a 1 or 2 bedroom unit. They're not gonna attract children. Maybe a single parent with a kid that stays with them on the weekends. You're not adding to the school system. So.
It does limit, the regulations does limit to 3 people
Right.
occupancy, so.
And I, you know, again, I think that could be tricky to enforce. I think you're better off just saying, look, it's 900 square foot maximum, and if you want to put a bedroom count on it, you can do that too. I don't know if it says 1 or 2 bedrooms, but if you wanted to, you know, I wrote one of these a few years back that was no more than 2 bedrooms, 900 square feet, 2 bedrooms.
And that's gross square feet,
Correct.
yes,
Yeah.
okay. And then, what about limiting the ability to rent it as a short-term rental? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Because you could put up a ADU and rent it
Turn
out
around
to
and rent it
short.
out as a short-term rental.
Yeah, defeating the purpose.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think you should. Should put a stipulation on, of course, then you get into the enforcement problem again, but.
Right, and it's definitely an end run.
Right.
Well, and then you get into the issue of what is short-term.
Right, you've got to define the term. And right, I think you end up dealing with a regulatory structure that gets created to deal with that. And I would, you know, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit. If I'm a homeowner and I live there and you know, I want to do a separate structure on my property, it's large or whatever the case is, and I want to do it as an ADU, is that such a bad thing? I'm making a little income, it's helping me keep my mortgage up. I'm regularly to keep an eye on it and keep an eye on who the guests are and their behaviors. I don't know that that's a terrible thing necessarily. Just something to think about.
And what if their family's visiting? Can they not stay there? Is it, like, you just get into,
Yeah, I think, you know, and I think, it seems to me that the town is pretty welcoming of short-term rentals overall. I mean, it's a lake community, it's been going on for 150 years. I think, you know, when you get into short-term rental regulations, you don't want to do it necessarily through zoning, you want to do it through an ordinance. A lot of communities have, there's a lot of examples across the state regulated short-term rentals, and the ones that have done it through an ordinance have had better luck because enforcement's a lot easier. As you know, zoning enforcement is a royal pain. And I think, you know, regulating those short-term rental uses is difficult. So yeah, I don't know how you want to go about that.
and I think I would also just add, when I was in Torrington, we did not regulate short-term rentals. But we did have issues where people were not using their short-term rentals as a residence. They were renting them for parties or events. And then we had enforcement to say, listen, you're not using this as a residential property, you're using it as a commercial property. And we were able, so as long as, regardless of the rental time frame, as long as they were using it as a residence and not, I mean, we had this one, they were renting it, they were filming music videos there, and there was like this, it was bad. but we were able to then say that was commercial,
Yeah, that's,
and go from that angle to regulate it.
and there is some case law out there now too. It's relatively new, but there's a few different cases. Actually, there was one just came out of West Hartford not too long ago, that says, I mean, you're treating, it's a single family residence, it's a single family residence. So unless you've got something in your ordinances that defines that differently, there's not much we can do to regulate it. Now, if it's a commercial use, as Rista said, or if, if you find out, and you could regulate it this way now, if you find out that somebody's renting out 4 different bedrooms within a house to 4 different
Boarding house.
groups of people that are not, cohabitating and using it as a family, could be an enforcement issue, because it's a single family zone, or, whatever the case may be. So I wanna go back, Krista, you said something about, zoning permit use. Our use table says it's a special permit.
Right, but, so,
but-
yep, so in your staff report, you're suggesting or having a discussion that we consider making it allowed by a zoning permit.
Right.
So I'm just saying, I agree with that.
Okay.
But one of the benefits of a site plan was that, or a special exception was that gets filed on the land record. So the person buying it is aware that it has to be owner occupied. So by changing it to zoning permit, we might wanna put something gets filed on the land record, so any future owner knows it's owner occupied.
Sure.
And not a two-family, but an accessory unit.
Yep.
So we're gonna take away with special requirements from the zoning board of appeals, we'll take that section out. That's B.
Oh, that's right, yeah, that's part of the confusion, is that your use table has it as a special permit, and the language says it's a special exception through the ZBA. And I'm simply throwing out there, maybe we wanna think about doing it as a zoning permit rather than having somebody come to the commission anyway. You have pretty specific regulations. I think Rista's right, if you go with a zoning permit, then that gets filed on the land record so that it's in the chain of title. Again, just something to think about here.
I'm good with it being a
Yeah.
zoning permit as long as it's totally compliant at the time.
Yep.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I
Can
get
that-
that. Me too, yeah.
Okay, so,
So can I just clarify what you mean by that, because we might wanna have some are zoning permit, some are special exception. What if I have a single-family house with a garage, and I wanna turn the bonus room into an apartment, but the house is old and it's non-conforming? That, I'm not changing any of the non-conforming setbacks, but I'm changing the use over the garage. Are you comfortable with that still being a zoning permit?
It's a pre-existing structure.
Right,
That would be okay.
right, so anything new would have to
Anything new would
conform
have to,
anyway.
right, have to
you would
comply.
have to conform. So I think what we should do, and I've done this in another community, is add a line that says no variances shall be issued to allow new construction.
New
related to
construction,
an
yeah,
ADU. So
definitely.
not
To take that avenue away from,
Right,
Yeah.
so you can't go in, get a variance to put on a giant addition to your house that doesn't conform, and then turn that into an ADU, but you could use an existing building that maybe doesn't meet the requirements, you can do it on a lot that doesn't meet the requirements,
Right.
that's fine, okay, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments on that? John?
Not on that. I had a comment on another section.
yeah, we're
Okay.
going down
All
through.
right, we're gonna go
Yeah.
down through.
All right,
Okay,
so
and you're
I will-
gonna add in the septic,
Yes,
things, the Torrington
yeah,
area
I
health.
have a note on that,
All
yeah,
right,
so
thank you.
I'll work on some language and get it to you, next month.
Okay, so the next one is accessory outdoor dining.
So this is a statutory thing, back in 2022, Public Act 22-1, Section 2 states that each municipality shall allow any licensee or permittee of a food establishment operating in such municipality to engage in outdoor food and beverage services and accessory use of such food establishment permitted use. We're not doing that, so we need to get ourselves in line with statute. It is currently allowed, outdoor dining is currently allowed as a zoning permit in the town center zone. But it's not allowed anywhere else where you have restaurants. So I think we just need to put some language in there that it's a zoning permit, to be consistent with the restaurants are allowed, I think, they're allowed in Highland Lake Business, Town Center Residential, Town Gateway, and P&I. So we need to just add that as a secret.
Expand that coverage.
Any issues there?
Any comments, anybody? No?
Is there a simpler way to do it? Like just,
I think it's just, I
it's an
think we.
accessory use of a restaurant and it's allowed
Something-
wherever a restaurant's permitted?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is, yeah, right, accessory outdoor dining to a permitted restaurant in parentheses as a line on the use table, and it can be ZP all the way across. Yep.
Anybody else set? Okay, next one, earth excavations.
This was a question that's come up a couple of times. Or the commission rather, earlier in the year, I think when we were codifying, had said, let's treat renewals, earth excavation renewals as a new special permit, and hold a hearing. I'm just clarifying that you still want to keep doing that, and if so, there's just a couple of little language pieces that we need to clean up, that didn't get cleaned up the last time around. I think historically, you were doing earth excavation renewals as a kind of a site plan review without a special permit, without a public hearing. That was changed, I don't know, 7, 8 months ago or so. Want to make sure that you're happy with that new process, and if so, then I just need to clean up the language in that section.
Yeah, I think
Go
we
ahead.
need to, because we changed it for reasons that
Yeah, okay.
we had, for issues.
We want to review it.
That way there we can review, you know, what's been removed, what their intent is for the next 2 years they plan to remove.
So you're saying to keep a public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, very good. I will give you kind of cleaned up language in the next month, just to deal with that excavation renewal piece, because it talks about a fee, which is a separate fee for
Right.
renewal, so we need to just clean that up a little bit.
All right, next one is family and group daycare, and that's a state regulation too.
Yeah, again, this is a use that is required to be as of right. You cannot prohibit the operation in a residential zone of any family daycare home, group child care home located in a residence, and there's statutory provisions to that. I think the maximum number of kids is 12. And so, again, we need to just get this into the use table as a zoning permit in your residential zones.
Did we already define it?
We already have these in residential.
The state mandated it.
Yeah, but I mean, we already have them in residential sections, but we don't
It was allowed in all sections, I think.
have them, but okay, so
I'll
what is this
double check.
doing? What is this doing that's different than we do?
So I don't see that it's allowed anywhere.
Oh,
And it could be a use table problem.
Oh.
Maybe we just need to simply get it on
Okay.
the use table.
It could be in use table, but I
Could
thought
be
in
in
our
use table.
regulations it states,
yeah,
Okay, I'll go
They're
back
allowed.
through that. I'll make sure that we're in good shape there. If you're all on board with that, I mean, you kind of have to be, so.
Yeah,
Let's
right.
just make sure
Right.
it's in there.
okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that came through when
Okay,
it was a mandatory thing from the
Yeah.
state,
okay.
and it was
Good,
added,
so you've had that discussion, that's good.
yeah.
All right, I'll go back and just, yeah, that's the issue, is it's not in the use table, so we want to get it in.
I have one of those.
Oh. Look at the definitions, because we have family daycare home, which I think traditionally has been 6 units or less, treated like a group home, but this was expanded it to those groups to 12, so we might have to redefine that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll add it to the use table. We'll fix the definition.
Okay, cool. The next one is family compounds, but I think let's just forget that one for a moment.
And
and we'll move on to farm stands, and we'll get through these big ones that we already have regulations on. So farm stands,
Yeah, so currently, and this is something I think we talked with you, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago. You know, you currently allow for permanent farm stands. By site plan review, it's under section 41540. And you know, part of the cottage food industry piece, and that's kind of where this comes into play. I think we've had some conversations in the office with folks that have cottage food licenses, which we can't remove, wanting to sell their goods sort of from their porch or from a push cart or whatever the case is. And we really have nothing in the regulation that allows that. I think this came up not too long ago.
It came
There was
up.
somebody that had some signs.
It came up on Birdsall Street, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
A few months ago, yeah.
So, you know, I just want to have a conversation about how do we want to do anything with this? Temporary farm stands that are, you know, sort of not these large farm stands that have a whole section dedicated to them where somebody comes in front of you and gets a site plan approval, but instead a small thing, either we regulate it, we put rules in there, but we don't issue any permits, or we issue a zoning permit for it, something along those lines.
Who licenses? Where do they get licenses through?
Public health, DPH.
Department of
So
Agriculture.
they get it through the state,
does
not
some-
the Torrington Area Health, they get it through state.
Right, am I right about that, or is it Torrington area? No, I think it's DPH.
I think it's DPH,
Yeah,
I think
'cause it's-
cottage industries are DPH.
Yeah, it's DPH, yep,
I see, okay.
yep, and there's a whole host of stuff.
I was gonna
Test
say,
their
they
well
probably have a
holes.
lot of rules.
They do,
in and
but
of
they,
themselves.
but they tell you that you have to also abide by your zoning regulations. So we can
Okay.
have zoning
Okay.
regulations surrounding it. I don't know that we need zoning regulations around the cottage food industry, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
But in regards to the sale of
Yeah.
of their items, or
Yeah.
somebody making breads, or, you know, whatever the case is, we have this permanent farm stand, which is not what most of these folks wanna do.
right.
Is there so I think, you know, the cottage industry is very specific to making something in your kitchen, jelly, fudge, bread. But I think what we're talking about is more, I'm gonna use the word homesteading, but that might not be the right term. But it could be eggs, it could be flowers, it could be, you know, baskets, I mean, but something that's made at home, or grown at home, or produced at home, that you're selling in a small little cart. So maybe it's like a homesteading cart that's, you know, 5 by 10 and, you know, easily movable and.
But how does DPH define this?
They don't.
I mean, it's not,
So none
they
of
don't
that stuff-
restrict it, they don't restrict reselling of other goods or commercial
cottage
goods?
foods basically is you create something in your kitchen.
I know, I just
And
wondered how
then you
DPH.
take it and deliver it.
Right.
You don't sell it from your house.
I see,
Yeah, it's a person-to-person transaction.
Mhm.
You can't ship it, but you can, right, you take it.
yeah, but if you have a
deliver it to
stand in
somebody.
front of your house, you'll sell it to the public
Right.
going by or something, yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if I have 5 chickens and I have eggs.
Right.
That's not a cottage kitchen, that's not a
Right.
cottage food, but somebody might wanna sell it, so I'm just saying, I don't think we wanna be restrictive
Right. I
enough
know,
to say
'cause we have
just
a
the
lot of that
cottage
already.
industry, but like
No, they're all
a
over.
homesteading cart
Right.
that allows cottage industry, eggs, flowers.
Yeah, and you're right, you're spot on. I mean, this came to us because of the cottage food industry, so that's kind of where that's
Yeah.
where we're coming from with
Yeah.
this. But Rist is right, I mean, we allow people to have chickens on their land, right? And so they're gonna wanna get rid of their excess eggs. And we know that stuff is going on.
Right.
I mean, it happens all the time. So I think the question is, do we want to put something in there that's sort of, right? Because you have permissible regulations. If it's
Yeah, yeah.
in the regulations, it's allowed. If
But
it's not in the regs, it's not.
what would we be regulating then? The DPH is covering all of this stuff. You mean like if they put a big neon sign in front of it
Right,
or
exactly.
something?
I think you're regulating sort of location, right? To say it can be, I don't know, the driveway or adjacent to the
I see,
driveway.
I see. So,
And
yeah.
signage, I think is a
Well,
part of it,
signage
because we
and
don't want
complete parking.
off-site signage.
Parking, I mean, you got some of the streets are narrow and things like that. I
Yeah.
mean, if you have customers, more than one car, 2 cars parked there.
Are
it
you,
could become an
Traditionally,
issue.
there's only like,
Right,
car comes up real quick
right,
and goes.
exactly.
Typically, right,
Yeah.
typically, you're not gonna have more than 1 or 2
No.
cars there. It's just one of those things where the question gets asked to us, there's no regulation,
Right.
therefore it's not allowed. You know, the guy well, he probably has a farm permit, but, I bought eggs from the guy over here on Torringford Street, just down the hill from the center of town. I don't know if he has a permit or not to do that, I don't know if he's technically a farm, or if he just has chickens, but he sells his eggs. It's not a problem, there's plenty of room there, you pull in, you grab your
Yeah,
eggs,
it's got
you throw
a
your
big
6 bucks in
driveway,
your
a place to
bucket,
park
you
there.
keep on
and
moving,
Right.
right? But when we get the question, it's not allowed,
Yeah.
so that's what we're trying to figure out.
So are you familiar with any such zoning regs around the cottage use permitted
Oh, yeah,
from
they're-
towns around?
They're out there, and that's why I'm having the conversation,
Yeah.
because if the commission said, nope, we don't even wanna talk about it, I wouldn't bother
Yeah,
pulling them together for you.
So I sort of, like, when you're looking at maybe drafting a regulation, and I don't know what anybody else feels, but if it's small, and we could define what's small, 5 by 10, 3 by 4, whatever the size is, it's on their property, not in the right of way. The sign can't be, it has to be a small sign, only selling stuff that's made or grown or produced on that property.
From that property,
I
right?
think that should be allowed,
I agree.
Well,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
it needs to be,
but just like as an allowed
Yeah.
use, and then anything bigger than that maybe needs a zoning permit or a special exception or something.
it needs,
becomes
yeah, it needs to
a
be
farm-
limited
has
to
to be farm
grown or
stand.
produced on that property, not
Homesteading
being
cart, I like that
brought from another
phrase.
place,
Yeah.
It works
not
nice.
from another location.
so,
Does that-
I mean, I'll look it up, but my question is again, does DPH define all that? Size?
No,
No.
No.
no,
So-
they have to adhere to local zoning regulations.
Okay,
And
okay.
that's what.
So they don't
that's
really
what
address it at all, they
Well,
just
we're not
say,
even addressing the cottage kitchen,
Well,
because we don't really,
It's bigger, right? What we're trying to address is bigger, and it's gonna end up encompassing those folks that have a cottage license. that's
right, but we're not
sell
gonna,
out
we're not gonna regulate what, the size of their
there. No,
kitchen.
because DPH is already doing
they
that.
take care of it.
Got it,
I mean,
Right.
it's-
so they
So we're
don't,
just regulating what they sell.
The
and how
farm
they-
stand,
how they sell it.
how they
Right.
market it.
And if they have, allowed to have a homesteading cart, but they don't have enough acres, they're not allowed to have chickens, they can't sell eggs in their homesteading cart because they can't have the chickens.
Exactly.
Right, like, this doesn't
yes.
preempt any of those other
Right.
things.
Yep.
It's just if you're allowed, and I think of Pratt Street, to grow flowers on your property and you wanna sell flowers on your driveway,
Right.
go ahead and do it.
Yep, yeah, yeah. So we should do that, we should have some,
I
some
like, I
guidance
like the
on
whole
that.
concept of
Yeah, we should have
homesteading
some
cart.
guidance
Yeah.
on that.
It just, and it's limited to what you can grow, you're not can't go out and bring produce in,
Right.
you can't be selling corn that you're not growing and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a good move.
Yeah, you may wanna look at, some hours of operation too.
Well, and a lot of those are no different than if you have visitors stopping by,
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but,
you know.
Plus, there aren't any, like Jeremy was saying, you just pull up, you throw your money in the bucket, and you
Right.
take your eggs, so it's not like there's hours, you can do that as long as the eggs are out. So it's kinda hard to
But no
regulate hours.
illumination.
Yep, no lighting,
yeah,
no
Signage.
outside, or no off-site signage, yep,
yeah, no
And definitely
permanent,
something on the size of the sign.
yep.
Small.
yeah, no permanent signs.
And I think it's important that whatever the structure is,
It's movable.
it's movable. 'Cause
Movable,
if it's
yeah.
close to the road,
Yeah.
it has to be, or it has to meet setbacks, or you have to be able to
Yeah,
move
not
it.
permanent.
Yeah, non-permanent structure, unless it's, on your porch, if you want to throw a table on your porch, and you want people to walk on your porch, I wouldn't, but have at it.
Yeah, yeah.
You all set?
I'm good. yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
next one's floodplain regulations.
Okay, so floodplain regulations, as I say here, the town has a chapter in the code, it's 231. It's old, it has not been updated I'm not quite sure when, quite frankly, the last time it was updated. But I think that we should probably codify the state model regulations, which were updated 2018-ish, does that sound right to you? Somewhere
I've been
around
out of floodplain, but yeah, somewhere
somewhere
around there.
And because Jeff is named, as the CEO, is named as the floodplain manager for the town, to me, it makes sense to just bring it into your zoning regulations. It's what a lot of towns do.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's part of the
Definitely.
zoning regulation, it's not necessarily part of the town
Kind of
code.
a-
You can do it as an ordinance, but I think it's a little bit more nimble when it's a zoning regulation, especially for him as the CEO to review the site plans, and for you, when DEP comes out with new model regs, to just adopt it rather than having to run through the
Yeah.
board.
So we can update them at that time,
Right.
when they come
So
up with a new
my
reg.
suggestion is to incorporate the state model
Definitely.
regs into yours, so I'll pull
okay.
those.
So that would necessitate rescinding the ordinance?
I'll have to talk with Paul
Yeah,
about
yeah,
his end of
okay.
it, but yes, that would be,
Yep.
or a change to the ordinance that simply reflects the zoning
Yeah.
regulations as
Okay.
updated.
So I think before we do that, we should present this to the Board of Selectmen to make sure that they're,
Well, like he says,
Right.
let Paul handle that part.
yeah, but I wouldn't say we're doing this, so therefore,
Yeah.
I would like make sure, but it does make a lot of sense, because it's, like you just said, easier to change. And the problem with FEMA and the limited funding, as it's getting more limited, if you're not compliant with the model regs, they'll just say, we're not gonna invest any money in your town. So we don't wanna mess around with that.
Aren't they getting ready to do an update on the flood regs?
On the flood mapping, there's a study happening, I think, right now for part of the watershed here, because the flood mapping in Litchfield County hasn't been done since, I think, the late seventies. Most of the state was done in like 2008, and so, they're finally getting around to Litchfield County and Windham County are kind of the two areas, because it's not the Connecticut River, it's not the shoreline, so it sort of got left to the wayside, and so your flood maps are from the late seventies, and they are currently working on a flood study right now. But as far as I know, the regulations aren't being updated at this time. Okay, so I'll have a conversation with Paul about how he wants to proceed on his end, and we'll get back to you on that. But I
Okay.
wanted to check in with you all first.
So let's go to the next one there, parking.
Lodging.
No, we're gonna skip lodging
Oh,
and
okay.
mixed use, and we'll get to the ones that he's got highlighted that
Oh,
we need to
okay.
get done, and then we'll go back.
Okay, so this is another statutory thing, and it's one of these things that you really don't have to put it in your zoning regulations, but I think it's a good idea. Public Act 2225 requires that any new construction of a commercial or multi-unit building requires that at least 10% of the parking spaces for a lot more that contains more than 30 be outfitted with EV parking, EV charging equipment. The building code picks that up,
How many?
10%.
Yeah.
So if it's a 30
Yeah, yeah.
spot, it's 3,
Three.
and so on.
Yep.
Building code picks that up, we as staff pick that up, but again, it's one of these things that I personally think it should be in your zoning regulations.
so
that
people
a
know about it,
developer just
yeah.
knows about it, yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Any concerns or questions there? Inserted into the parking section.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, the only place that would have come into play right now would have been up at the school. That got changed over to affordable housing, or probably should have done something there, but we didn't.
Right, and when was that approved? Might have been before the statute.
It was,
Well, it could have been, yeah, back in
was.
January
I
23rd.
think it was March.
Yeah.
It was like March.
Oh, wait a minute, this is on or after January 2023?
Right.
It's only-
But you've also got the old hospital building too,
Yeah.
that's another one.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, and I don't know when those were approved. Of
And
course,
that
those
was-
aren't new construction either.
Right, I was just
Right.
gonna
No.
say,
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
Those lots are, I don't know.
Well,
if
there
the
was,
houses are
there
school
was some new
probably.
construction up there on Spencer Hill, but that was decades ago, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think we should put it in the regs.
Yes,
Mhm.
definitely.
Well, you guys are easy, I love this.
We're not done yet.
We're saving the hard ones for
We're
last.
we're saving the hard ones for afterwards, get the easy ones done.
We're lulling you into a false sense of security.
Hey, they're your regulations, so that's fine.
Okay, so now your next one, shipping containers, kind of rolls into containers for refuse. So I don't quite know. Should we,
No, but you're trying, I know what you're saying,
Separate
like
between-
building a tiny house out of a
Well,
storage
no, I'm not,
container.
I don't think I'm saying that at all. I mean, certainly people, if you get creative, that's something that's doable, and, you
They're
see
doing
commercial
it.
structures and everything
Right.
else. I think it came up, and I don't know if it was you, Peter, somebody brought up shipping containers at the last meeting, and Jeff and I were talking about it, and, you know, there's nothing in the regulation right now regarding shipping containers. He mentioned that there's a few out there, there's some in town, people are using
There's
them
many of
sheds
them,
or storage or
many.
whatever it
Yes,
is.
right.
Your container section, which is 41534, talks about fencing, containment, gates, and all this kind of stuff. And then when you go to your when you go to your definitions, containers are strictly refuse containers. So a shipping container isn't covered by 41534 containers at all. And so I think if the commission wants to regulate shipping containers, which right now, if you read the definition of structure, they're a structure, and therefore they're eligible for a zoning permit as an accessory structure. I could get a zoning permit tomorrow and drop a shipping container in my backyard, assuming it complies with setbacks and everything else, and away I go. I don't know if the commission wants that to be happening or not, and I think that's what we're talking about here is, you know, do we want to regulate these differently than a structure? Do we want to put some guidelines on them? Do you want to prohibit them entirely? That's really the question for you all.
I don't think we should prohibit them entirely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't either. I mean, there's just
They serve a purpose.
too many uses out there
Right,
for them.
yeah.
But I think we should regulate them somehow.
But I don't think you should call it, like, it shouldn't fall under the same regulation as like a dumpster either. I think there's gotta be some,
I think an accessory use,
Yeah.
or an accessory building. So it has to
As a
meet
structure.
the same, yeah, it has to meet the same
I mean, they're either
setbacks
being,
as a
like a
shed.
shed.
they're either
right,
being used
yeah.
for storage of some type or.
Or a connex, like they call it a
So
connex.
that's how we would regulate them right now.
Yeah.
So if the commission's content with that, then we don't need to do anything, which I think is
So,
fine.
when is a shipping container not a shipping container? Because right now, there's all these plans out there for putting two containers down side by side and putting a roof over the top of them and creating an area between them, and you got the two doors for the container, and then you can put a garage door up on the space in between them. So is that a shipping container,
It's
or
still a
is
structure.
It's a structure.
it another
So it's-
structure?
Right.
So a shipping
But-
container would be a structure.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you're saying that's already,
said that at the
Yeah,
beginning.
yeah, yeah.
it's already being addressed under structures, yeah.
Right, it would, I mean, you know, I think, and it's an enforcement thing more than anything else. I think it's happening right now where if they're getting dropped in place without a zoning permit, they would require a zoning. I mean, Clover Farm sheds do, I shouldn't say Clover Farms.
Yeah, but I know,
A
right,
pre-built shed,
Yeah.
same, you can have the same issue.
Right.
So,
Treat it like-
you know, and I don't know, from a visual standpoint, I don't know if the commission wants to regulate them a little bit. We were talking about it internally, we thought, let's bring it up with the group and see what everybody says. If you're content with it being a zoning permit,
So how about the ones you rent, you know, you rent something like a pod or something, and then it goes in your front yard, and it's not like a waste receptacle that's gonna be hauled off with the, you know, renovation waste. It's kind of this thing that's sitting in your front yard as a storage unit. Are
Theory,
those,
those
are
should
those
be
already,
temporary.
are those already regulated under structures? Oh, well, I've seen some in places for a long time,
and I think that, right, that gets to
the point, what you're, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, sort of, right, because in theory, a pod gets dropped off, you load it up because you're moving, and then it gets picked up and moved away. Now, I don't know how that works. If you get a pod, for example, I don't know what the cost structure's like, so I don't know how people have them in their yards for years at a time. I don't know how that piece works, but.
Yeah, I don't either, but I feel like if there was a complaint and you had to go out there and do an enforcement action, you would say,
It's a
show me the
structure.
contract, when's the date it's gonna be taken
Right.
away?
I
Otherwise-
Well, you have a day in a contract that's
Yeah.
gonna be taken away.
Right.
Now, if the pod label's peeled off and
Yeah,
there's no
right.
contract, and
Then it's a structure.
then it's a structure, you
Yeah.
gotta move it
Yeah.
to meet the
Yeah.
setbacks.
Exactly.
Well, it sounds like you already have the tools to
Yeah.
kind of address that, but,
So like the containers, you know, most people, I think, buy them. You can rent them. Construction sites bring their own in. Some of your warehouses, I think, around town have got storage containers. in
Public
back.
Works has them, yeah.
Public Works has them.
Yeah.
So if they're in, say, a non-industrial area, do you want to require them to be sort of painted? Or they can still have all this
Writing on, yeah.
writing on the sides and all that? I mean, because you're moving from an industrial type of usage to residential use. So we don't require your sheds to be painted, so.
Yeah, you start to get aesthetics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
boy,
Be a
yeah.
solid color, but I'm painted lime green.
Yeah, right.
Is that better?
It has to be the same, I mean, I worked in a town that had a regulation that said all your accessory structures in residential zones had to be the same material as the primary structure. So if you had wood siding, you had to have wood siding on your accessory buildings too. I don't know if we wanna get into that. I
No, I don't think
You
so.
probably don't need to for the most part.
But what about like signage, like, you don't want a container that says Maersk on the side of
Yeah,
it,
right.
sitting in the
Right.
side in your backyard, you know? That would fall under like, outside the regulations for signage as well, so that might be, unless you're talking about, you know, graffiti or something like that. Willie, are you referring to, signs on the side of the container?
Yeah, then the names
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff,
names,
yeah.
Right, that's what I thought,
That's exactly what I was referring to.
yeah.
So we also need to define on, you know, commercial, industrial use or
Residential,
residential
yeah.
use. Because, you know, public works, you know, if you got, I can almost bet there's probably storage containers up in industrial park behind some buildings.
Yeah,
Oh, sure,
There's
Yeah.
tons of them up there.
pretty typical.
So we have to figure out how we're gonna draw that line.
Well, we have different setbacks, different requirements, you know,
Yeah,
for
right,
residential
right.
versus industrial. It just, you know, are they pretty? No. Do we wanna get into enforcing the aesthetics of that? And that I'm kind of torn on that one, but
Mhm.
just because it's an enforcement nightmare, which ones are pre-existing? What colors are gonna, like, I just,
Well, we don't do that with a shed, right?
No,
Right.
we don't,
no.
correct.
You know. And if somebody, say a neighbor can see it, are they gonna be less offended if it's painted white than if it had a name on the side? Probably not,
Or if the kids use it for a paintball target.
right.
That's one way to get it painted.
Right?
Yeah, right.
All right, so are we leaning towards just leave it as it is, it's an accessory structure and,
Yeah.
I think so.
I
Okay.
think- Okay, now, what's the next one over here?
Signage in the-
Signage in the windows. So, I drove around today and looking at signage. Your convenience stores, they all have the lotto signs in them, they have different signs up there. They're not offensive. You've got your new vaping shop down here that's got the fluorescent lights going around the side. You've seen other vaping shops, different places where their signage and window stuff gets pretty weird. So, if it's a paper sign, you know, should we regulate something paper in there or just regulate the lit up part? That's my viewpoint.
Well, we already regulate sign illumination, so let me see what that's.
We regulate signage, but
And illumination?
But you know, you get Coca-Cola signs, they got Vodary signs,
We don't regulate it in windows though, do we? That's the point.
yeah, we don't regulate windows.
We're regulating on buildings,
Exterior, on the
perpendicular
building,
signs, yeah,
All exterior.
but not window signage.
well, and that's, you know, again, it gets down to, that's, you know, that's where you come into play. Okay, you have building signage, awning signage, monument, freestanding, I forgot what else, there's a few others. And nothing talks about window signage.
Right.
So again, if you look at these as permissible regs, because it's not listed, technically it's not allowed, right? But we sort of just
Let it
accept that it's a reality that, you know, these businesses are gonna put all kinds of stuff in their windows and so, and that's fine. I mean, you know, personally, I don't have much of a problem it's just sort of part of the landscape. I think you're right. I think when you get the businesses that put the neon or LED, you know, lights all the way around the windows that flash at you, then we're into a different category. And, you know, convenience stores are known for that. Vape and smoke shops are really known
I
for
mean, I
that.
was looking at Dairy Queen. They've got signs inside the window for the Dairy Queen, and they get their pricing sign and all that. I mean, do we want to do something? I don't think that's normal for that type of business.
Right, and we wouldn't be regulate, like open signs, hours of operation, those types of things aren't, we can't regulate those, because they're not advertising signs. So that's, you know, that's where you have to draw the line too. But if you have a smoke shop, for example, that puts up a 2x4 panel that's flashing at you that says, you know, vape in the window, that is something that we can regulate.
But you're saying that's already not allowed, because we don't have anything
The
about
way
it in
I
our
read
regs,
it.
right?
The way I read it.
So I think we're talking about two different things. So in the regulations, we already prohibit no sign shall be flashing, animating, pulsing, moving, or rotating. So if we have a vape flashing sign, or we can say that you
Regardless
can't
of whether
do
it's
that.
on the outside of the building or whether it's in the
Wherever
window?
it is, yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
And I've had some
Yeah.
It's
crazy
visible
things.
to the
that-
outside, right.
But so I think we can regulate that. From a window signage, I think, you know, we can't regulate content, but we can regulate, if we wanted to allow it, which I think makes sense, the percentage of windows that are covered.
Right.
About, you know, window signage in about 50% of the window.
No more than 50% of the windows.
Are covered,
Space.
right,
Yep.
that way you still have some visibility. I think that's also a safety concern, you know, if something's going on, police wanna be able to see in there, you know. I would think we would want something along those lines, and just,
Okay, but right now, Jeremy, if a merchant were to ask you about this, they probably don't usually ask, they just put up stuff. But if they were to ask you, you'd say, well, technically, no signs are allowed in
Read through the
windows.
zoning reg, you read through the sign section, the window signage is not one of the types that we regulate. But we also recognize that it's
But-
unrealistic, right?
Well, I mean, once you do a regulation, then, you know, does that open all doors and everybody rushes in and covers up 50%
I don't
of their
think so.
windows and,
I
yeah.
don't think so. I think it makes it easier to say, you know, especially at time of, you know, if you've got a new business moving in,
Yeah.
you know, we have those conversations. Well, what kind of a sign can I have? Well, you can have a wall sign, and you can have a, you know, whatever it is, facade, awning, so on and so forth. And we can say, oh, and by the way, only 50% of your window
Exactly.
can be covered.
package stores are usually the biggest violator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very easy to
Yeah.
do that.
And the gas stations.
Yeah, gas stations.
Well, most of the
package
gas
stores.
stations, the lower part of the window is where their coolers are and everything. And then they only got that little space up on the
Yeah,
top.
Yeah,
And I think we have, to see, the 50% kind of gets kind of weird here, because if they got glass structure out there, and then they got their cigarettes and their coolers there, that they've got plywood up against the windows, so you don't look through the glass, you're looking at an obstacle on the other side. Is that a window or is that not a window?
That's a window,
It's a window.
it's a window.
So all the
Glass
gas
is a window.
stations are in violation that have their coolers up against the windows.
But the coolers aren't signs.
They're not signs.
Okay,
They're grayed out.
Yeah, the
all right,
sign
Alright.
is still.
that's a good argument.
Yeah, they're not a sign.
So they could, instead of graying that section out, if they wanted to be able to insert signs back there,
Mm-hmm,
they could.
all right, so, you said we have regulations on the lights,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Flashing,
flash,
spinning,
pulsing,
and
right.
rotating, yeah.
okay.
flashing, animated, pulsing, moving, or rotating type.
God, I used to love that deluxe package store sign. It was here when I moved in, it was the
Yeah.
last of its kind.
That was.
Yeah,
And it also says exposed or unshaded incandescent or fluorescent electric light bulbs or neon shall not be allowed by themselves or as part of any sign except as part of a seasonal decoration or community event or celebration. So I think we regulate the lighting
Yeah,
piece of it already.
Yeah, you do a fairly good job of regulating the lighting part. And then in the lighting regulations, I think you could lean on that too, because there's some comments in there about not being able to see the source of light.
Mhm.
So are we gonna change anything, or just let it kind of go the way it is?
I think allow window signs up to a maximum of 50% of the window area. Just something simple,
And just allowed, right?
allowed,
Yeah.
right? So at least something is allowed there, so.
If you're a pessimist, you say 50% is not allowed.
The
Right.
package stores will say, well,
Yeah, right.
Okay, next one is temporary healthcare structure. That's another public action.
We're going over smoke shops?
yeah, so, you
Oh,
know.
smoke shops, okay, I
shops.
thought that was part of the
No.
signage.
Oh,
All
I
right, we'll
didn't
do
know if you
smoke.
were skipping that one too. 'Cause
Now, we're almost to the end, so.
Yeah, well, we're behind the 8 ball on that one, right?
Speaking of signage,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, you know, again, this is a question for you all, is it something that you wanna take up? There are communities that are doing it, I've gave you a couple of examples there, where they create a definition for smoke shop, and then they, you know, therefore it becomes a different use, they put it in their use table, and it's only allowed in certain zones, so, you know, it was again, a conversation internally within the office, do we wanna do something to kinda keep these off from Main Street? And, you know, if it really, I think a lot of times with these, it comes down to the signage, as you just alluded to, right? It's, there's lights, there's all sorts of crazy stuff that goes on. I mean, we used to battle with one guy in Southington who always had his wacky arm flailing inflatable thing out in front of the smoke shop, which weren't allowed. And so our CEO was down there telling him to pull it in all the time. And, you know, every Friday it would come out and then it would disappear Monday morning. It was chalk. So,
Noontime Friday, it came out.
yeah, pretty much, yeah. So, you know, again, it's a question for the commission, is it something we're worried about? I mean, you know, there are vacancies on Main Street, we want those filled, obviously, we want businesses on Main Street, but, you know, it's just one of those types of uses, you do allow, currently, they're allowed as a small retail shop, I think it would be considered, but you exclude convenience stores from the Main Street zone, from town center, so, you know, and
We do?
you do, yeah, convenience stores are regulated separately and they're not allowed in town center.
How did Papa's get in?
He's got fresh fruit and vegetables and
Outside
everything
of
else.
convenience store,
So
got
he's a
it.
small grocer.
Yep.
I got it.
Selling
Okay.
food, stuff,
Yeah.
yes.
Is that one of those uses
Why are we
that you have to allow somewhere in your town, but not,
I don't think so.
we could prohibit it altogether?
I think you could. I mean, I don't know that you need to. I mean, you know.
I'm just trying to think where else we would,
Yeah, I think you'd allow it in Town Gateway. I think you'd probably allow it in, maybe P and I.
Yeah, you go on Main Street lined up with 3 or 4 of them.
Right.
So.
But, you know,
and they're
Gateway.
coming, they're, you know.
Well, they're here. That one,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we've had one before.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
And we still have one all the time, Winston News.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhat, so.
Yeah, yeah,
But we had one on the corner of Union Street, and that didn't last long.
yeah.
And you're right.
Well, that didn't
often
last
they don't
long, did
last
it?
They kind of
long.
regulate,
Market kind of-
self-regulate.
Yeah, they do sort of
I mean, the market kind of dictates that. so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
May happen with the new one too, so.
Mhm.
We've had a few inquiries. There was somebody interested in the old Cappy's Cleaner going in there.
Jeff said, yeah.
Yeah, and one that's already going in down here. There might have been a third inquiry, but I can't quite remember right now. But, you know, again, just something to think about. If you wanna pursue it, we can. If not, that's fine too.
I don't like them.
I don't either,
No.
but, yeah.
No, I think the less
But-
we have, the
but
less
like-
is better.
Yeah, and something like Papa's, you know, you walk into Papa's, they got all their smoke stuff there. But it's not, what's the one term, smoke monkey or something?
Yeah,
You know, with the big monkey with a big cigar in the front, like, that's a different vibe. You can
It
still,
is. Yeah, and I think in the regulation, if you look at orange, actually I think all of those, they say it's a shop with a certain percentage of its floor space or display space dedicated to those products, 15 or 20%, whatever it is. A small grocery store like that's not gonna be 15 or
No.
20%.
Mhm.
It's just not. It's gonna be behind the counter or whatever. I've never been in there, but I can imagine what it looks like, and it's probably stuff that's behind the counter.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should have
Small
something to, keep them in the town gateway, like I say, P and I, things like that.
Limited.
Keep them out of town center as much as possible.
Okay. All right, so we'll draft up some regs. We'll use some others that are out there. Good developers.
All right, temporary healthcare structure.
So this is another one that's a public act. There's nothing that says it's not allowed. So I'm not concerned about that from that standpoint, because it's considered an accessory structure in accordance with the statute. But again, I think it's a good idea to put it in your use table so that if somebody's looking for it, there it is. These are small, self-contained units that are built off-site. They get dropped in, they get hooked up to your sewer and water at the site. DPH regulates them, and then they're gone once they're no longer needed. So they're often called granny pods. There is a state law that you have to allow them as of right. So we already do because we have to. This was a public act, 2017, so it's pretty old at this point.
How is this different from what we were talking about?
So they're temporary, and they are meant to be temporary. The idea is that they're expensive. I've never seen one get installed, so let me first say that.
Okay,
I'll just set the table.
yeah, because I've never seen one.
Yeah, and neither have I. And,
Yeah.
I've been doing this, and the public act's been around for 8 years. I don't know, have you seen one, Rista? No, I don't know of anybody.
I was
that's-
thinking you were talking about like ramps. I'm like a temporary.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
granny pod.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
granny
yeah, yeah,
pod
I
law that
gotcha.
came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
So they
I'm
are.
not sure what it's for. What is a granny pod?
So-
Being a granny myself, I
They
mean.
are self-contained temporary healthcare units. So if you had somebody that needed home care, needed to be taken care of 24/7, rather than putting them in a home, you could bring one of these things to your house and have it set in your backyard. It's essentially an accessory
For
dwelling
like,
unit.
for like a home healthcare worker to stay in?
No,
No.
for the individual
The
that
granny.
needs to be cared.
The one that had medical
They're,
needs.
they're self-contained, they usually have lifts and kitchen, it's.
I see,
They
uh-huh.
are basically a,
And why do you say temporary? I mean, if you needed that, aren't you gonna need it for temporary because it's short, likely to be? All right, that's it, that's enough for that.
once it's no longer in use, like.
Oh, come on, you
Don't worry
guys.
about it until you see them putting one up in your yard.
Yeah, really? Holy smokes.
You got room in your yard for another one?
Wow.
We're all temporary.
Ouch.
That's what she's
We're all
got,
temporary.
that's what she's got
Oh.
the camper for.
We're really, ouch. That's like,
So do we need to do anything?
Again, I would add it as a use in the use table just so that it's there because.
because the
You're
state law
required.
requires it. How do you hook that up to
So
sewer
add
and
as a use
water?
and then add a definition?
I would add it as a use and add a definition, it's
Yeah.
exactly right, yep.
How do you hook it up to the infrastructure?
It depends, I mean, if you're on sewer and water.
Yeah.
Then it's a pretty simple, straightforward hookup. If
Really?
you're on septic and, yeah,
I mean,
there's.
you have to dig a channel
Yeah.
to,
Yeah, or you connect it directly to the house's connection, whatever
Uh-huh.
the case is, but yeah.
Seems like the expense of that would be worth an
It's-
ADU.
it's
Yeah,
crazy.
really,
It's
exactly. I'd rather
crazy
have an ADU on the, yeah.
The difference is you can rent them from these companies. There's a company actually in New York that makes them.
Uh-huh.
And that's, I think, kind of why Connecticut enacted this statute. There's a few other states in the Northeast that have it.
Okay.
And there's a company right over the line, I forget exactly where it is in New York. It's not far outside of Connecticut that makes these. And,
So do you have to prove that there's a,
Yep.
an infirm
Medical
person
need,
that
yeah.
needs
Yeah,
it?
there's notarized documents and everything else.
A
So
granny?
we would reference the statute.
Sick granny?
Yeah.
Gee.
Yep.
Okay. A little levity in the zoning process. Sick granny concept, okay.
We're all temporary.
Yeah, I hear you, but we're closer to it than you are. So,
You know, you never know.
well, that's true, right?
That's part of the fun.
Yeah. All right.
So the next one is subdivision regulations, Article 9, fire protection.
So this was Peter brought this up. You know, I went through those subdivision regs. They, overall, the regulations seem, I don't see any major issues with it. I think they're fine. You had brought up fire protection. Article 9 deals with fire protection. You have broad authority to require the construction of a fire pond or a dry hydrant. What the regulation does not address are
Cisterns.
cisterns, thank
Right,
you,
yeah.
tanks. So you might want to add that in there.
And that's something that been discussed since I've been on the commission forever. I mean, and like I said, you need to add Winston Fire Department
I
into
think
that
to
too.
require it in certain circumstances, maybe if a fire pond or a dry hydrant's not feasible, then a cistern becomes a requirement.
Yeah, so it could be any
Right.
one of those three.
Yeah.
Why hasn't it
Adequate
been
fire
included?
protection such as fire pond,
It's
dry
just not in
hydrant
the
system.
regulations.
I know,
It's never
but
been
you
put
said
in.
it's been talked about for years since you've been at, why
I've
hasn't it been
given copies of
included?
regulations to previous planners, and it went absolutely nowhere.
Okay, but you can't think of a reason that it's not
No,
been included?
no,
It's
just
just
it's
been
never-
ignored? Okay,
It was never
gotcha,
included.
gotcha.
So you're saying the cistern part was never included?
Right, the cistern
Yeah.
part was never
Yeah, there's no
included.
reason we shouldn't add that.
Yeah, yeah,
And-
Yeah, I think it's kind of a
Definitely, yeah.
no-brainer. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
you know, I've worked in towns where they're just simply required over a certain.
Well, and it
units
should be.
of something.
Usually it's 5, you know,
Right,
if there's a
5
subdivision of
tends to be
5 or more,
Yep.
then a cistern of a certain size is required. The biggest issue with it is who's responsible for the maintenance of it and everything else, because you don't want to put that on the town or on the fire department or public works to be the one to maintain it, you know.
But then the developer goes away and there's nobody
Well,
there
there's-
to
they're gonna
maintain
have
it.
to have a property owners group to maintain it. You know, that's the thing.
Well, whose responsibility should it be? From, you know,
Well,
your
not the fire
experience with
department,
these things.
because if that thing leaks and there's no
Should
water
be
in it,
they-
then
they
you're,
raise.
you could be spending $50,000 to $100,000 to
Right.
replace it,
Right,
and you don't want that on the town or the fire department.
Right.
You know, a real
Should
world
be the owner.
example of that
Right.
is, you know, I worked in a community that required cisterns, and this was before I was there, so I never had a full understanding of how this happened, but a cistern was installed, it was cracked.
Yeah,
When the town tested it, it was full of water,
right.
but, you know, the
Well,
developer went away and.
yeah, we have
it
one in
was
town
empty
now that,
forever.
you know, the developer put in, it was poured in place in sections, and I don't know if there's water in it, it's been there for 10 years. The town accepted it, but it's up on Reaching Hill Road, you know?
They should be constructed so that the stormwater system directs. to
No one
them, so
maintains
that
it,
they-
no one cuts the brush around it, nothing.
So do we wanna
so that's
just,
an obvious failure that's about to happen.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Won't they be happy up there?
somebody will.
Yeah, well, wow, that's a mess, okay.
so do we just wanna require that the developer provides fire protection, whether it's a fire pond or a dry hydrant or a cistern, whatever is most appropriate?
And maintains it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and any subdivision of 5 or more.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate, fine.
There's another enforcement,
Yeah, you catch
Item.
those though early. I
No,
mean,
we'll
you
catch
do
that when it
with-
comes through us through a subdivision. I mean, as the years I've been out here, we haven't had a subdivision come in. Unless it's 2 lots or something very small.
and I
None of the
think
large
it's-
ones, yeah,
I think
but-
this is a good time to do it if Wallen's
Right.
Hill goes the direction that
Well,
it will, then.
you know, there's 51 acres up on 263 in Winchester that's been for sale for several years. There's land partially in Colebrook, partially in Winston on 44. There's like 160 acres up there for sale. So you've got places like that, and there just isn't water supply around to get water for fire protection.
So your next comment here, the references to the Winchester Fire Department, should it be
Should be both.
both, right?
Should include both,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay,
definitely,
And that's why I put that.
yeah.
Family compounds, is that it?
What's that?
Or earthquake?
Well, let's go back and do them, we'll go backwards now. Let's do mixed-use properties in the town center.
Okay, so this is a sort of, again, a clarification to some extent and an attempt to make the process simpler, I think, for folks. You know, Currently, mixed uses require a special permit within your town center zone, so if somebody came in and wanted to build something new with commercial on the ground floor and apartments up above, it's gonna require a special permit. There's a lot of buildings obviously around here that predate your zoning regulations that have had that kind of setup forever. And so we have had this conversation in the office because there's been a number of property owners over the last, I'm gonna say 2 months or so, that have expressed interest in just shifting that around. Maybe it's adding an additional residential unit upstairs, or it's taking a portion of the commercial unit that's somewhere and flipping it to residential, or sort of changing
On
up
the
the
ground
mixture
floor?
within. Yeah.
Because there aren't any commercial things on the second floor, right?
There's
I
a
mean-
couple of buildings that have some office space on the
Oh,
second
yeah, yeah,
floor.
right.
And so there's been some interest in converting some of that office space to residential. And so we've just been having the conversation internally of, okay, it's a special permit use. So if you follow that line of thinking, it's a special permit use. If somebody wants to do something different on the inside of the building, it's a modification to the special permit. Now, if you have an old building, you don't have a special permit on file because it's been that historically forever. Do we make them come in and get a special permit, or do we do it by zoning permit? So we kind of wanted to just have this conversation. You know, there's the new housing bill that's maybe gonna be approved this week, who knows, we'll see, is full of carrots and not so many sticks, and one of the carrots is, if you're allowing, commercial conversions to residential in your regulations by right, you, have access to priority funding from Grayfield, priority Grayfield, infrastructure funding. So, you know, it's one of those things where do we want to just make a cleaner process there? How do we want to handle those things?
So I'm surprised, I don't know, maybe this is a little too far. I don't think mixed use with commercial on the first floor and residential on the second, third floor should be a special exception. I think we want that.
I agree.
Yeah,
So I think that should be a site plan.
that should be the
However,
standard.
if there are specific uses within the commercial that then require a special exception,
Sure.
that use would get the special exception. But as a mixed use, I don't think that should be that's what we want. We want to encourage as much of that as possible. And I think special exception on the first floor for residential.
Okay, special exception to the CBA or special permit to you?
Permit here to us.
I agree.
Special permit coming here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always use those
Yeah.
the same, I forget.
And which they're fine in statute, but you guys did, this town differentiates the two, special exception
Yeah,
goes to
I
CBA.
always forget that.
No, come here.
So now, we're not talking Main Street. Were we talking
Yeah,
Main
we
Street
talking Main
included?
Street.
We are talking about.
Yeah,
Yep.
yep.
So do we really want to allow first floor residential on Main Street?
No,
No.
You currently do, though. You currently do. There's nothing in there that says you can't have residential on the first floor. In fact, you just did it at one.
but it requires a special exception.
First floor does?
We just did it with
Okay.
Jesse's.
That's why we
Yeah, well,
needed the
that,
special
that's
that
exception.
was a house
Apartments
before,
for-
that was a
Right.
house
No, I know.
before was.
Okay, so that's already in there.
But so,
I'm thinking more down this way.
No, I
so
know.
say special permit. So if it's a blank. So a SP is special permit, right? In our
Yeah,
thing.
definitely a special permit.
So, town gateway, special permit, so the mixed use would be allowed. If it was, I'm looking at some of the, a large format medical office building, that use would have to come in for a special permit. A large format office business, that would have to come in for a special permit. These are all large office, veterinary hospital, a bank, a banquet facility. So we have, you know, some uses that we've said, I'm looking at the wrong one, but the use in particular needs a special permit. So my recommendation, if everybody agrees, would be mixed use in general site plan. The commercial needs to get whatever kind of permit, site plan special exception that's required. And if they want residential on the first floor, that requires a special permit. But
Yeah,
residential, second floor and above, and commercial on the first floor as our site plan.
Now, how about if we have an existing building and we're, with the exception of the residential on the first floor, which would require a special permit, in the case where you're adding additional units, you're switching things up, you've got 6 upstairs, you wanna go to 8 because you're gonna make a them smaller, zoning permit?
Sure.
I would say zoning permit, definitely,
Okay,
yeah.
all right,
'Cause I mean, at some point, we're gonna be dealing with 508 Main Street.
correct,
Well, and
That's
and
gonna,
it's
we're gonna see
changing.
that at some point.
yeah.
What people are looking for in downtown apartments are changing. So what we're seeing are a lot of these larger apartments are being broken up into 2 or sometimes 3 apartments.
Right.
We want that. So, yeah.
Wow, we have parking for that? That's another issue.
Well, you don't have any off-street parking requirements on your main, I mean, you have the parking, it's kind of a perception.
I know.
Because people don't wanna have to walk across the street.
Right.
You've got parking.
It's a perception problem, it's a safety problem, and I think it's a signage problem. We underutilize our town's parking that we have. It's not lit,
Enforcement
it's not
problem, the police
signed.
don't wanna
It's-
enforce it.
Right.
And
All
there's,
those
big
reg-
is just the usage,
Might have
like
to
all
write a
those
ticket.
dead cars out back.
Yeah. That drives me crazy. I think, Willie, you've heard me talk about that a few times.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll get some edits there in front of you.
Okay.
But I think that's a great idea. I think site plan for the mixed use makes a lot of sense. I
And
agree.
so here's
It's
what we're
your Main
doing.
Street, that's what you want.
We're
Right.
making it easier
Right.
for what we want, and we're making and prohibiting things we don't want, like the vape shops, right? So we have a vision of what we want our Main Street to be. Mixed use, commercial, retail, restaurants, artists, studios, offices, that's all allowable. The things that we don't want are prohibited or special permit, like residential on the first floor.
Okay, now for the one that could be difficult here, lodging.
Yeah, and this, this, again, internal staff conversations, we didn't talk about this with you last time around. Jeff and I were talking about sort of, boutique hotels. He wanted to make sure that we had something in there that would allow it. A boutique hotel is just a hotel that's smaller and more specialized. We allow it because we allow hotels. So then the conversation started to turn to, well, what about a site that wanted to do cabins? Or, you see, there's a company out there called, I think it's Getaway. They installed a place in East Haddam. They bought an old 4-H camp, and they bring in these trailers, and it's hugely expensive. I don't think I could ever stay there, but some people certainly can. And they bring in these trailers and they park them along the site. We don't have anything that would allow that right now, right? Like sort of that campground. We have outdoor commercial recreation, but I don't think that quite fits the box that we're talking about, sort of alternative overnight stay accommodations is kind of what we're
Like a
thinking.
campground type thing.
Like a campground type thing, yeah.
Do we have any interest in somebody coming into the campground?
No, I don't think we do.
So why did it come up? Why was Jeff thinking about it? Something,
We're always thinking. I mean, you're in a position where something like that would make sense logistically from the standpoint of where you are in the state. You're at the top of Route 8. You're, right below the Berkshires. You're in a spot that would make sense for something like that to be attractive.
well, like where? Cabin rentals, tent platforms, I mean, we have Lone Oak up the road there, and there's the
Couple of
other.
properties
White
for
Pines
sale.
and bar camps.
Yeah,
that,
yeah, the other one. Like glamping things, you're talking about on private property? People's-
No, we'd be talking more commercial, yeah.
I think it would be a campground, but not necessarily a campground with tents. Sometimes a campground with cabins, a campground with
Well, he's got
trailers.
tent platforms.
Yeah, it could have tent
Yeah.
platforms,
Yeah.
but when I think the best way to visualize would be, do we want to allow campground type uses?
Right, which requires some level of infrastructure. I mean,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I guess you could have real primitive, but
I'm
Yeah,
thinking
it's
of
not a
that
good
one they
idea.
have down on West River Road in
well, the
Riverton.
state has it, yeah.
Yeah.
So
State
there-
has a campground there.
There is a,
but that's very primitive. I
Yeah,
mean, there's
yeah.
no infrastructure there.
No, you'd have to put in septic systems and,
Yeah.
all the rest of it, sure.
I think they have.
So you're
water
talking about
there.
in town, not
Yeah.
in Winchester
Yeah.
Center. Oh, septic systems.
No, yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we're sort of envisioning would be more attracted to a larger lot.
Yeah.
We're not talking about in town, we're talking
Yeah, yeah.
about
In one of these
up in
big
the hills.
areas for sale or something.
Yeah, yep. The example that I kind of keep going back to is there was an old 4-H camp in East Haddam that got bought out by this company, it's called Getaway. I would say, take a look at it. And they provide the cabin, right?
Yeah.
I think there's 50 or 60 of these little
Oh.
They're just little one-room,
A lot of places, a lot of campgrounds.
there's a ton of those,
Yeah.
right? And it's, you know, in some ways it functions, you go in and you go to your cabin, you have a code to get in, and you're on your own in there. So I think that's the type of thing we're thinking about.
Speaking of which, we used to have Taylor Brook Campground up there. They've closed it all, you can't even get in there anymore.
No.
Terrible.
So
So
they tore down all the buildings they
I
had,
know.
everything. So,
what we have to be careful of with this is there's two groups out there. One's called tenters, which you can get into agreement with them. They'll come in, they'll put the platform up, they'll put the fancy white tent up, they'll put the things in there. And people have done these tenters things, like one or two in their backyards. And there's another one called Hip Camp, which is, these both are like the Airbnb of the tenting, camping world. Hip Camp, you don't provide them anything, you just give them a spot and maybe a fire ring, and that's it. And if it's four-wheel drive, that's great, they can drive in there and get to it. So if we're gonna do anything about this alternative lodging, we need to make sure that we either prohibit that in the town for like, you know, like there's one in the center of Great Barrington, one street off in center of Great Barrington. Driving the town's crazy in Berkshire County, how to do with Hip Camp and tenters.
Yeah, so I
So-
mean, I think that sounds like a zoning violation to me. And I don't think that's
Well,
not really
it-
what we're talking about so much.
But what is, yeah, but what, okay, if it's a zoning violation, but the state of Connecticut, where do they address camping? What do they, at what point is it not a campground?
Well, if you,
But see, then also, do you, is the family that's got a tent in the backyard for the kids to go out and sleep out at night, is that a zoning violation?
no, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, so it's a very tricky subject, you have to, and it's, a lot of people are getting cranky over it. And it's something you have to be very careful of.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we were thinking of is not those sort of one-off tent sites where somebody's renting off a piece of land in the back of the yard, because again, then you get into that sort of, that's more of a commercial use, right? You're renting a chunk of your property off to one person. to
But when
pitch
is
a
it,
tent.
when is it, what's different than Airbnb?
No, it's a permanent structure, I think that's the difference.
Well, and then no enforcement of that is a nightmare, because you're gonna say, don't do it, and then the person's gonna be gone, and then on a Friday night, they're gonna show up again, and you're gonna
Yeah.
say, don't do it. So that, again, is something that would have to be, I think, would be better enforced as an ordinance, where the police can go up and say, it's time to go,
Out, yeah.
because they can go up on a Saturday, where a zoning officer's not going to.
And they have more teeth.
Right.
in order to- Yeah, I mean, I think we're thinking more sort of a traditional,
Campground.
that type of thing, yeah.
Well,
So-
But I think, I mean.
So right now, it couldn't happen anywhere.
We have campground regulations.
You have
Right.
campground regs, right, but I think those are more for pitching a tent, bringing in your RV,
Right.
Right.
that type of thing. I think we are thinking more of
Like a commercial,
a commercial operation where you
Establishment,
show
yeah.
up in your car and there is a room or a structure of some type that
Yeah,
you
but that's what camp,
walk
I'm not,
into.
I'm not getting that, being an avid camper for 50 years. That's what it is now, you go into a KOA, you can rent a cabin, you go in and, how is it different? Those are
Do-
campgrounds.
Do KOAs have cabins?
Oh, yeah,
They do.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so maybe we need to take a look.
Tent
we'll-
sites,
we'll
cabins,
take a
RV
deeper look at
places.
your definition then.
And then take a look at Torrington's regulation,
Okay.
because we just updated it for Clug Campground, Clug Hill.
Yeah, Clug Hill Campground.
Campground,
Okay.
so that's a recent,
Yeah, because that was just built.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think the last one now is family campgrounds.
We just talked about,
or
compounds.
compounds, yeah,
Or family compounds, yes. I have campgrounds in my mind.
communes.
So this was something you had brought up, Willie, I think.
Yeah, I thought, it's been something that's been pushing around southern Berkshire County, and I was just wondering if there's been anybody in talking about it. I know there's been several families that have called and ask about large pieces of property, whether they could put multiple houses on them up there.
Yep. So I think it's an interesting idea. I think tying it to family becomes challenging, and I sort of talked about that a little bit, right? I mean, this is the same conversation that we had about ADUs.
Right.
6 brothers, they buy a 50-acre parcel, they all build an individual house. One of them says, you know what, my wife's family's in Florida, we're moving out. What do you do with that 6th unit, and how do you regulate that it has to stay in the family? So, concept is good, I think it gets difficult. So, I threw some examples in there, and there's links in that document to residential compound regulations, and there's a whole bunch of them across the state of Massachusetts, Commonwealth.
And those are like the tiny home communities.
Yeah, they can be, although
can
they could also just be regular sized
Right,
houses
right.
too.
But this would cover that also.
It could,
if we
yeah,
did
and
that.
again, the tiny house, we can't regulate this, we cannot have a minimum size for a residential structure. Zoning regulations, I mean, the state statutes say you can't have a minimum size. Building code has some minimums with regard to size of bedroom and hallway widths and things like that. But there's a provision in statute that we can't regulate the minimum size of a residential structure. So tiny homes are allowed anyway, but yes, this would allow multiples, not a lot.
Right.
So, you
This
know,
could also help with like an affordable housing situation where
Absolutely.
where you don't own the land, but you're buying just a home. And then we have that similar, I mean, they're individual lots, but up in Torrington, there's a lot of those. And so this could be one of those.
it could be. I think there's a lot of opportunities here for sort of different compound-like developments. I mean, it's essentially you're talking about multifamily developments on a large parcel.
I mean, we
And so-
have that in Winston. I mean, we have a category in the tax, multi-houses,
Yeah, yep,
because Winston has that.
you have them, right.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're not allowed anymore, but they were done.
Hundreds
right?
of, yeah.
So, you know, I would say, take a look at some of the examples that we put together there. Those 5 are all pretty similar to each other, which, you know, I mean, once somebody adopts a good reg, everybody else kind of
Yeah.
takes it.
Anybody in
uses it.
Connecticut doing it?
Not that I found in a quick search.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I have multi-code, so I can
Right.
search general code and get this stuff. There very well could be, but I just did a multi-code
Yeah.
search of general code. So take a look at those, see if any of those look interesting, and we can start to dig into that a little bit. But, you know, we can do soil-based density. Town of Columbia, I think I referenced theirs too. They recently, and theirs is a little bit broader as they talk about multifamily housing. So it could be multiple units. It could also just be big units that allow, you know, multiple tenants. They just adopted this reg that's basically soil-based. So if you can prove that the septic allows it, that's what sets your density limit. So just things to take a look at. That we can continue that conversation.
Okay, so item B is discussion of possible updates to subdivision regulations.
I think we already did.
Yeah, that was the last one.
That was just the fire.
Just the fire.
Oh,
That's-
okay.
And that's all I see. I
Yeah.
think it makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, no, I-
Reasonable change.
I don't think there's anything, I've looked through it in the past and I didn't see anything. I mean, it's always worked well with it,
Yeah.
but everything other than the cistern problem is.
And then, number 7, other business. Anybody got any? Okay. Approval of minutes. I move that we approve the October 27th, 2025 regular meeting.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Any communications?
Nothing from me.
Nothing from you. Who wants to do it?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
Yep, did it before I did. How's that?
Thanks, everybody.
yeah.
Very good. Ironically, this
We
is.
made it right on
this
time.
was
I told you, we were getting done by 8:30.
This was one of our
You
longer
put a time
meetings.
frame on it.
Yeah. Very efficient, yeah.
We did it.